Hi, I'm Dongshan. Welcome to Dig into China, where we take a deeper look at China to reveal insights you can rarely find anywhere else. If Trump wins the US presidential election and imposes a 60% tariff on Chinese goods, most of which will end up being borne by Chinese companies, it would make survival nearly impossible for China's export businesses. Asking them to further reduce profits is unrealistic, as both employees and suppliers are already stretched to their limits. Even for a major company like BYD, the struggle among its suppliers is clear. BYD provides a 9-month commercial paper to them, and some suppliers have already gone bankrupt due to cash flow breaks. In the end, to maintain export orders to the US, China might only have the option of depreciating the renminbi. Alternatively, China could choose to stop trading with the US altogether or even sever diplomatic ties. After all, Xi Jinping has long promoted the internationalization of the renminbi, right? In the eyes of many nationalists, the renminbi is on the verge of replacing the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, enabling China to bypass trade with the US and create its own global currency, perhaps under the BRICS framework. On the topic of a BRIC currency, Xi Jinping recently attended the BRICS summit. Just days before the summit, Russia, serving as this year's rotating chair, announced that the summit would introduce several ultimate measures aimed at ending dependence on the US dollar, including a plan for a unified BRICS currency. However, Putin later acknowledged that the BRICS currency plan has encountered considerable resistance. While issuing a BRICS currency remains difficult, Putin has successfully launched a BRICS payment system aimed at countering dollar-based transactions. Essentially, it's a shared financial pool for BRICS countries, where each nation can use its own currency to purchase goods. Once funds enter the pool, sellers can settle transactions in any currency of their choice from within it. For instance, if India wishes to purchase oil from Russia, it can deposit its rupees into the fund, allowing Russia to withdraw yuan from the pool for settlement. As the host of the BRICS summit, Russia's primary goal is to unite everyone in issuing a joint statement endorsing the BRICS payment system. Let's not delve into whether this situation is beneficial or detrimental for China. Typically, given the nature of the domestic party media, they would eagerly use such a compelling anti-US narrative to attack the dollar and promote the internationalization of the renminbi. However, it's oddly quiet this time, with minimum discussion on the topic. This raises an intriguing question. Why has the promotion of the renminbi internationalization suddenly faded? Is it facing yet another failure? In this video, we'll talk about the BRICS payment system. With this system established, does China now have the leverage to cut trade ties with the US? Let's start by examining why Putin's push for BRICS currency has failed. The reason is quite simple. The currency's issuance primarily benefits Russia, with China being the biggest loser, leading to China's strong opposition. This situation clearly demonstrates that the Sino-Russian relations have their limits. The moment that the two countries consider unifying under a single currency, their friendship boat capsizes. However, a BRICS currency would be highly detrimental to China. With Russia currently under sanctions from the West, China has become Russia's lifeline. China buys energy from Russia, while Russia purchases industrial goods from China, and they bypass dollar transactions through currency swaps. Essentially, this arrangement functions as a barter system. Consequently, we've witnessed the double-digit growth in trade between China and Russia over the past 2 years, with last year's trade volume rising by 26% to a record $240 billion. However, in the first half of this year, trade between the two countries abruptly stagnated, with growth dropped to just 1.8%. What's behind this? The answer lies in China's unilateral control over its trade volume with Russia. In the first half of this year, China exported more than $51 billion worth of goods to Russia while importing $65 billion from Russia. This indicates that China is still experiencing a trade deficit with Russia, purchasing slightly more than it sells. A trade deficit means that the industrial goods China sends to Russia can only be exchanged for a fraction of the energy it imports. However, if China's export to Russia continue to increase and the deficit is eliminated, it would imply that China is receiving too much energy in return for its industrial goods. This situation would result in China accumulating an excess of rubles that it can never utilize, which explains why China has suddenly decided to control its trade volume with Russia this year. This is also why Russia is eager to introduce a BRICS currency. Essentially, it's looking to take advantage of China once again. If China isn't supplying more goods to Russia and Russia is hesitant to pay in dollars, then Russia can propose a new currency for China to accept. In reality, the BRICS currency serves only to help Putin address the lack of confidence in the ruble. China would undoubtedly be the first to oppose this. It's like asking China to use its renminbi credibility to support Russia's worthless ruble. Even Xi Jinping wouldn't go along with that, no matter how naive he might seem. So this time, the friendship boat has truly capsized. When Putin's first plan failed, he devised a fallback strategy, the BRICS payment system. Regarding the BRICS payment system, Bloomberg's reporting was quite scathing, with the headlines, "Why the BRICS de-dollarization dream remains a fantasy." Bloomberg sarcastically pointed out, despite all the enthusiasm for de-dollarization, the conference organizers advised attendees to bring greenbacks or euros with them to the city on the Volga. Kremlin advised that dollars can be freely exchanged for rubles at most Russian banks. In truth, it's clear to anyone with insight that Russia's intention in establishing this payment system aren't benevolent. Putin is merely seeking a way to circumvent Western sanctions by using other countries' currencies. Given that Russia is currently facing widespread sanctions from the West, finding alternatives to the dollar for independent transactions has become essential for him. At this juncture, he has two options. One is to adopt digital currency, while the other is to utilize the yuan. However, due to the high volatility and liquidity risks associated with digital currencies, the yuan emerges as the more favorable choice. In a way, Russia is actually helping China advance the internationalization of the yuan. Let's take a look at the BRICS nations. Initially, there were 5: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. This year, they have also invited countries like Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran. If we imagine putting all these currencies together, which currency do you think people would be more inclined to take out? It seems that no matter how you slice it, the yuan stands out as the most dependable option. The yuan can be easily converted into dollars. Therefore, if this payment system operates according to Russia's rules, it will likely result in a shortage of yuan, while the currencies of other countries will go unused. So who ends up losing in this situation? Consider Brazil, whose currency, the real, has been one of the poorest performers globally in 2024, continually depreciating throughout this year. With the BRICS payment system now in place, Brazil is pleased because it can use its currency to buy oil from Russia and various industrial goods from China, all the while having the flexibility to print as much as it needs. However, Russia and China might not be keen on accepting reals from the pool, given its ongoing decline in value. In this case, Russia can opt for yuan. But what about China? Would they choose rubles? Ultimately, this scenario is likely to lead to a situation where everyone wants to trade their depreciating currencies for the relatively stable yuan. This strategy would certainly not please China. If it had been 10 years ago, Xi might have welcomed it because he had the financial muscle to engage in currency manipulation and could leverage the Belt and Road Initiative to entice other nations. For instance, he could demand that countries with worthless currencies offer collateral by mortgaging their ports and docks. In exchange, they would receive Chinese industrial goods, while China would accept their currencies. If these currencies depreciated too much, the Xi could take control of their ports, much like what he did in Sri Lanka. Of course, she would only resort this tactic with smaller nations. In dealings with India and Russia, China often finds itself at a disadvantage. Just recently, she sought a reconciliation with India over border disputes, conceding to numerous Indian demands to secure peace. As for Russia, the situation is even clearer. A nation already facing heavy sanctions from the West that can still exchange its currency for yuan is, in essence, exploiting China, transforming it into a supply hub for Russia's war in Ukraine. The issue of renminbi internationalization essentially revolves around China subsidizing other nations to increase the yuan's international settlement volume. Let's face it, despite the years of striving, the yuan only made up 4.69% of global payments last year, which is a mere drop in the bucket compared to the dollar, euro, and the pound, which dominate the top three positions. So when she had a solid financial foundation, it was somewhat justifiable to spend money to enhance settlement volume and make grand proclamations. But now that the resources are dwindling, it's time to adopt a more pragmatic approach and perhaps stop discussing this lofty dream altogether. The BRICS payment system does have its advantages, especially for countries like Iran and Russia that face US sanctions. By avoiding dollar-based transactions, these nations made it much harder for the US to gather solid evidence against them. If North Korea were to get involved as well, it could result in a new coalition of rogue states, allowing them to operate in their own little bubble, free from the US oversight. However, there is a significant problem. Aside from the so-called axis of evil countries, Russia, China, Iran, and potentially North Korea, most other nations do not want to be associated with this group. Countries like India and Saudi Arabia are strategically balancing their relationships, ensuring they maintain favorable ties with the US. If given the option, they would likely still prefer to be paid in dollars rather than yuan. Therefore, the BRICS payment system is unlikely to gain much traction. On one hand, Modi has just settled border disputes with China, but at the Kazan summit, he put Xi in a difficult position. Xi has been keen to expand the BRICS organization by bringing in more allies to bolster its influence and enjoy the role of a leader. However, Modi countered Xi's ambitions, asserting that the BRICS must avoid becoming an anti-Western coalition, making it clear that these countries can only be partners, not full members. Xi's role as the leader appears to be just a hollow facade. India clearly doesn't hold him in high regard. Modi attended the summit for just one day before leaving to meet with the German Chancellor, showing that India doesn't take the BRICS organization seriously. They are interested only in the benefits it provides and are willing to walk away when it no longer suits them. As a result, the BRICS alliance is quite fragile. Argentina has embraced a pro-American stance and outright rejected joining an organization, while Saudi Arabia is still weighing its options. If China and Russia, as the leading powers, fail to offer enough incentives to keep smaller nations engaged, the BRICS organization will likely shrink to just a few rogue states. The burden of providing these incentives will likely fall on China, which still has the most resources among them. In the past, when Xi had substantial reserves, he could easily spend to gain favor and support. Now, however, he genuinely lacks the financial means to secure backing from these smaller countries. For a country's currency to achieve the status of an international settlement currency that other nations are eager to hold, especially if it seeks to dethrone the US dollar, the requirements would be incredibly demanding. To begin with, a currency aiming for international settlement status needs to maintain a stable exchange rate. The renminbi has pursued internationalization by promoting its stability, often pegging to the dollar within a certain range. However, this could soon change, especially if the US and China find themselves in a second trade war. In that case, the US might impose tariffs of over 60% on Chinese goods. potentially resulting in a sharp depreciation of the renminbi. Additionally, if the goal is to seize a portion of the dollar's market share and boost other countries' willingness to hold renminbi, it's essential that the currency not only remains stable but also appreciates in value. An increasing value of the currency will naturally enhance its appeal. A country's currency can appreciate under certain conditions, one of which is when the economy experiences rapid growth. For example, after China's reform and opening up, the exchange rate of the dollar to the renminbi changed from 1 to 8 to about 1 to 6. However, with China's economy now starting to decline, the renminbi is likely to depreciate as well. Certainly, the Chinese government has the ability to manipulate the yuan's exchange rate and force it to appreciate. However, as a country with a trade surplus, if the yuan were to appreciate voluntarily now, especially with tariff sanctions, it would jeopardize export trade. If China can't earn enough dollars, the yuan would quickly be rejected by everyone. This situation presents a contradiction because the yuan's primary backing actually comes from the dollar, or we could say from China's export trade. While the yuan is currently being overissued, the balance sheet of the People's Bank of China shows that at least half of its value is still anchored by foreign exchange. Additionally, the yuan is not freely convertible, and there exists only a small offshore yuan market, which allows the Chinese government to maintain control over the fluctuations in the yuan's exchange rate. As a result, the Chinese government cannot continuously provide other countries with yuan, since the issuance of the yuan is fundamentally limited by the dollar. If China cannot earn enough dollars, it cannot issue sufficient yuan. This is one of the reasons why China envies the United States. In theory, the US is the only country capable of freely printing money. It can collect seigniorage from the entire world. However, it's crucial to emphasize that this is theoretically speaking. In summary, the key takeaway is that Xi's resources are running low, causing him to waver on the pursuit of yuan internationalization. His prominent appearance at the recent BRICS summit suggests this shift, especially since state media didn't hype the BRICS payment system as a way to promote yuan internationalization or fuel anti-American sentiments. It appears that the Communist Party aims to gradually downplay the idea of yuan internationalization, similar to past slogans like housing for living, not a speculation, and a dynamic zero COVID, hoping that the people will forget these concepts entirely. This indicates that Xi's grand vision for yuan internationalization may be on the verge of falling through. Thank you so much for watching. If you find this video helpful, please like it, drop a comment below, and hit the subscribe button right here. It really helps YouTube suggest my video to others. I'll be back with more content soon. Until then, stay well.